Leanne has asked me to talk about disciplinary literacy this morning. So I'm Jess, I'm the literacy coordinator in Newbridge School. This has been very topical for us because we've just had our Eston inspection and they were very interested in writing across the curriculum, and particularly if students are able to write at the same standard outside of English as they are producing in English lessons and in their English books. And they were very, very interested in disciplinary literacy, whether the literacy writing that students were doing in subjects across the curriculum was suitable in developing their subject knowledge, and that it didn't just seem like a tacked on literacy activity to tick some sort of box. So I'm going to talk, hopefully that's moved on. I'm going to talk about what disciplinary writing is and why it is important. And I'm going to give you some examples of effective disciplinary writing in our context. And if there's any questions, please ask. And I've left my email at the end as well in case anyone wants to contact me directly. So in terms of what disciplinary writing is, just going to see if I can, yeah, perfect. It means really focusing on writing types that are specific and inherent to subject areas. So instead of just doing, for example, a letter in science because they need to do some literacy, making sure the writing that they do is scientific writing. So there's lots of opportunities in subjects like science and technology to develop writing skills, but it's more common to see writing such as instructional writing if they are doing an experiment, maybe a list of instructions, and also lots of opportunities for evaluative writing. So maybe evaluating a product design in design and technology, or evaluating an experiment in science. And also obviously in really literacy rich subjects such as history, you'd expect to see a lot of evaluation essay writing. That doesn't always look like it might look in English, but we would expect those subjects to be demonstrating lots of extended literacy writing. And really it's about avoiding contrived writing tasks. So this is something that we had a problem with after the new curriculum was launched and we were launching the new literacy framework, and lots of teachers are very keen to get those skills involved in their lessons, and we ended up with things such as a letter in science. We had art doing some sort of leaflet, and while it was really great, they were really enthusiastic about literacy, we then had to have conversations with heads of departments about making it maybe a bit more appropriate for their subject area and not so contrived. And that was something our challenge advisor picked up when they came in for a meeting shortly after that policy was launched. Lots of schools that I've talked to and visited have whole school templates for writing. So for example, formal letters, there'll be a consistent approach to the writing of formal letters across the curriculum, or there'll be a consistent approach to writing instructions across the curriculum. This was something we looked at a lot, especially when we were trying to improve the quality of writing and consistency, and we looked at the pros and cons. So for example, obviously it's very good to have a consistent approach to the teaching of writing skills. Also, it makes students really proficient in structure in their writing, and expectations are clear across the curriculum. And it's very good for those teachers maybe that are less confident or experienced in teaching writing skills. However, we found when trying to implement some general frameworks and templates for writing that it kind of encouraged that contrived approach to writing in lots of subjects. We found the same actually in terms of numeracy. So I knew our numeracy coordinator was trying to introduce a consistent approach to graph work and drawing graphs, and then found out quite quickly that the expectations for graphs in maths are very different to expectations in science, and sometimes actually you can't have a specific approach because it's not really appropriate in different context areas. We also found in terms of just the GCSEs, in terms of what words such as evaluate and explain and that sort of writing mean, it's very different in different subjects. So it's not as simple as saying, this is the way we do it in English, you should now do this in history and geography. It doesn't always work that way. So it was something actually we decided that we weren't going to do. We have consistency in terms of our approach to basic accuracy. So in every subject, there's a literacy marking policy. The addressing of spelling, punctuation, grammar errors is consistent across the school. If students make mistakes, then it is the responsibility of every teacher to pick out those basic errors and for the students to correct them 3 times, and they're very aware of that, and that's something that comes across really clearly in the book scrutiny. However, there isn't a consistent approach to particular writing types. So we do not have templates for essay writing, letters, instructions, and things like that. Instead, what we've decided to focus on is me providing support perhaps for those subject areas that aren't very confident in writing. Perhaps if they're doing some type of writing for the first time, then I will show them what we do in English and see if that is appropriate in their context. We also have a skills Google Classroom. So when we designed our new literature and numeracy framework, we asked subject areas to upload examples of resources and student work that they thought hit particular strands of the literacy numeracy framework. And then that is open to everyone, so they can see best practice really across the school. It's also something that we focus on in whole school professional development sessions. So I will share some best practice. I'm very aware of which subjects across the school are our strong literacy subjects and maybe which ones are our weaker ones. So I try and work with both the strong departments to share best practice and weaker ones to upskill staff in those areas. I just wanted to show you, I've got a couple of examples from a recent book scrutiny of some disciplinary writing. So this was I know you can't see it very clearly, but it's a history essay where they're evaluating the causes of the depression in Germany and looking at lots of different reasons and then coming to a conclusion. So even though this is not exactly how we do an essay in English, it still demonstrates loads of different literacy skills. So when I'm looking, and I'm always involved in the book scrutinies, I can see that obviously the writing is very extended, it's logically organized into paragraphs, the subject-specific vocabulary is very high level. I can see that they're developing their history skills as well as their literacy skills, which is really important. And even some of those higher level literacy skills, so using commas appropriately, which lots of students struggle with, I can see that there's evidence of that then across the curriculum, not just in English. I can also see that the teacher there has highlighted, so they're using the codes P for punctuation when there are errors. And then there was a task where the student rewrote one of the paragraphs to make it better in terms of both their historical knowledge and their literacy. And I've got another example. This is a year 7 RE lesson, and students were learning about street pastors, and then they were writing an explanation piece just explaining what they'd learnt. So the focus there was really on their RE knowledge. What did they know about street pastors? But again, I can see from a literacy point of view, there's clearly an expectation to write in paragraphs, to logically organize their writing. There's some really ambitious vocabulary like patience and compassion that's spelt correctly. But I can also see when they are spelling words incorrectly. In this case, I think they're spelling a couple of words like volunteer, things like that is being addressed by the teacher. So there is that expectation that they are spelling things correctly across the curriculum. So really that was our takeaway, not to have really prescriptive ways of writing, but to ensure that the basic accuracy is always a focus. That I think for all literacy coordinators is always a target area to improve basic accuracy, and even more so post-COVID, we're noticing that that's a real issue. So that's been our focus, really driving consistency through the basic accuracy teaching and allowing teachers to develop their own models for good writing across the curriculum. Final thing I wanted to mention, because this came up a lot in the inspection, another reason perhaps maybe for not having prescriptive approaches to writing, we were told quite a lot that we were over scaffolding the work for students. That was a lot of the feedback that we received from lesson observations. Obviously, when you prepare for a lesson observation, especially if it's an inspector, you want to make sure you've got all of the differentiation, all of the scaffolding, that everyone can access the work. But actually they said that that was a problem, and it was inhibiting creativity, and it was actually inhibiting challenge in the lesson. So I think sometimes allowing students to maybe have a little bit more freedom in their writing is really important as well. I think it's difficult to get that balance. I think lots of us argued that if we didn't provide these sentence starters and models, the students wouldn't begin writing. And they argued, well, if you never provided them in the first place, then they wouldn't be as reliant on you to begin with. So I think there is maybe a little bit of truth in that. So that's something particularly we're working on now moving forward, trying to improve creativity and giving students a little bit more freedom and taking off some of that support where appropriate. But yeah, so thanks very much. Hopefully that was useful. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I've just popped my email up on the screen there as well.